All right, welcome back to another episode, CRE, The Unspoken Truth. I'm Charlie Coppola, joined with my father, Craig. Today's an interesting one. I'm really excited to talk about this and hear your thoughts. But the topic today is we're going to be talking about the responsibility shift to starting your own firm, opening your own firm, or starting your own team. And so, the place I want to start, the way I understand it is you started Lee and Associates, the Arizona office, when you were 30, I believe, and
30.
you had
Yep.
had, a couple good years there before. What was that thought process like, and like what were you thinking at the time? Were you deciding between staying where you were at or moving or starting your own thing?
So I had started brokerage in 1984. We started Lee and Associates in 1991. I was 30 years old. So I had about 7 years experience. And I was at that time had kind of had a nice rise. I was the last couple of years, the top producing broker at Grubb and Ellis in the office division. And so I was their kind of fair child, young broker that was getting the leads from management. And when we left, that was their big pitch is like, you have so much opportunity here. And when we left, it was like there were seven of us that left. And I can, in hindsight now, after 35 more years, 34 more years, it was the best decision I ever made. We were scared at the time. Your older sister, Kate, was born. I was finishing my master's at ASU at night and weekends, and we started the company. And so it was a pretty scary time. But I knew I always, again, I always went back to, and one of the reasons we become brokers is so that we can control our own destiny. And every time I look at a Twins uniform or the George Brophy bobblehead that I got, knowing that the Twins released me, that they were in control of my future, and I knew that as a broker I would be in control of my own future, and ownership is that next step.
Yeah. So this is interesting because, from my perspective, working at a company, I've not been a broker. And then now starting CRE One Source, there was a big shift for me from being an employee to
Oh
an
no.
owner.
Oh yeah.
Brokers, in theory, right? They run their own business, they eat what they kill. And so, I'd be curious to hear what that shift was like, because in theory, you were still running your own business. You still had all of that responsibility before. So what was that change like when you started Lee, Arizona?
Well, it's really interesting. I had lunch with Bill Gosnell, who was really the main guy. He was the top producer ever at Grubb and Ellis. He was the one who left and then asked me, along with several others, to join him with Lee. And Bill was the driving force of that. I had lunch with Bill 2 days ago, and he turns 80 in the next couple of weeks. Uh, and and I remember Bill had a sign on his desk at Grubb and Ellis, and the sign, this sums it all up. It said, the next best thing to making a deal is to see the guy in the cube next to you lose one. And so brokers are by nature super competitive. And at the big shops where they don't have ownership, they're even more so. And I would argue the CBRE, JLL, Cushman and Wakefield, Newmarks are more competitive internally to their own peers than they are externally to people at Lean Associates or other offices. And so that change when we started Lean Associates to be happy when somebody else made a deal because and when you own the company, the pie is growing. It's not a fixed pie that you're trying to get something from. It is a growth mindset, and that's a big shift.
Yeah. Yeah. So was that one of the, like, to walk me through early days, what were some of the best things about, you know, starting Lee Associates and that shift? And then, obviously you were anxious and nervous. What were some of the worst things about the shift?
Well, this is an old story, but we had moved out. When you leave a brokerage company, you leave in the middle of the night, and because you have deals. So I actually was moving out at 2 in the morning on a Saturday night, and I had a bunch of deals going. And literally, there was another broker came in. He was a single guy, and he came in at 3 in the morning, and he called the manager. So at 3 in the morning, the manager showed up at my house and we were unloading files and stuff. And he says, "What are you doing?" I said, "Hey, I made the decision to go to Lee." And that caused me the first year at Lee and Associates, I had 61 deals on my TIP that Grubb and Ellis made me honor every one of those deals. So in 1991, I was like low man on the totem pole at Lee and Associates because I was they
Working
didn't
for them.
announce it. They didn't announce it, but I was number one at Lee at Grubb and Ellis because I had 60 deals that I closed over
Yeah.
there. So that was a really terrible time because just that period. But and then also, the uncertainty. There's a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt when you start your own company. How does this work? And when we closed the first year, and we had a big profit, I think our splits the first year were 80 something percent. We were like, where the hell was all the money going? Because we were getting 55 or 58% at Grubb and Ellis. And so it took us about 9 months. We started in September, so I would say then I'd like this has been more 14 months, 15 months. And we were like, oh wait, this really does work.
Yeah. Yeah, it was going to be a follow-up question. It's just like, what were some of the great things, and how long did it take for you to be like, wow, this was a great decision?
I think
Um,
I think it's a couple of years. It's not right
yeah,
away. It's not right away because there's a shift too. When you're at a big firm, it's a different sell. You're coming in, you're selling the company. CBRE, we're the largest real estate company in the world, and we're the greatest thing since sliced bread. And then when you go on your own, at the time, Lean Associates was relatively small. We're big today. We're the sixth largest in the U.S. today. But we were the ninth office, and so we were a small nine office, first office outside of California, eight other offices in LA and in Southern Cal, and we had to learn how to really hunt. It wasn't We weren't hunting on a farm where they had salt licks and they had food put out for the deer so that you could know where they were eating. We were hunting on our own, and that is really a differentiator. That's a second differentiator, I think. If you're a hunter, a real hunter, and you like to go chase business, then owning your shop is a good idea, or joining a
yeah,
place like Lean Associates.
right, right. So I want to fast forward a little bit to, starting a team, because, even when you moved over and started the Arizona, you were still, really
Solo.
responsible for yourself. Now you have a team, you have salaries to pay, you have livelihoods that you're responsible for. What was that shift like? The added responsibility, and then like also the pros and cons to kind of making that decision.
Before we jump to teams, let me give you one other
Sure.
thing. On the ownership side, there's a mind shift change between a taker. When you're at a big shop, you're fixed splits. So you're trying to get everything you can. If you get a 2,000 foot sublease, you want a color brochure and you want it professionally done by graphics. And you're just trying to get as much as you can. You're trying to every day you're in the manager's office and saying, "Hey, that guy got this assistant, he got this sign." So you're trying to take as much as you can. When you own the company and there's a bigger picture, it becomes not necessarily a giver, but certainly an understanding that like I don't need that because it affects my splits down the road at the end of the day because or the profit sharing, whatever it is, as the owner of the company. So the difference between a giver and taker is a different one for owner. Now on a team, you're right. When I was 30, I was on my own in the first 20 years of my business. So I had another 14 years where I was really a solo. I had an assistant maybe, and I had a runner, but I didn't have a full team. I brought Andrew Cheney on 23 years ago now, and that was really the first time where I said, okay, now we're going to have a team. We renamed the team from the Coppola Group to the Coppola Cheney Group, and that at that point you're going like, okay, now I have even a layer. It's really a nuanced layer. It's like I have ownership at Lee and Associates, and now I have ownership in this team, and I'm obligated at that point to really train and spend time with my teammates to make sure that they're the best that they can be. And so that's one of the things that well, I always tell the story is I got my master's and my MBA in 1991 and I didn't use it until 2003.
Yeah.
So I had 11 years where I was like, why did I get my master's? And then I started managing the team, because the role at Lead Associates, you have people doing stuff for you, but when it's your team, you don't.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Eh, I think I know the answer to this, but what did you have to stop doing, or what did you have to change when, you wanted to start building that team and leading effectively?
Well, I think we're gonna do at the end of the year, we're gonna do a couple on splits and
Yep.
how teams are formed. Uh, One of the things that I'm a firm believer of, and this is not universal, we have a couple of teams in our office where the brokers, the team members go to every meeting together. They don't divide and conquer. What we made a conscious decision, and one of the reasons why Andrew joined me, still with me, is that we are different people. His skill set is different than mine, and therefore we are rarely in the same room together. I would say that maybe we're in the same room 2 hours a month.
Yeah.
And so Andrew's doing different things. He's built his business different, and I've helped coach him differently than how I did it. And so our posture is we want to have 1 + 1 = 3. A lot of team members like the comfort of having somebody
Yeah.
else in the same room.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that we focused on at Capola Cheney, is that we're building different skill sets. The second thing that we're trying to do is we're trying to eliminate everything but unique ability. It's a strategic coach concept. And then we're trying to say, look, Craig, this is what you do really well. I want you doing that
Do that.
75 or
Yeah.
80% of the time. So what we try to do in our team is we're in our UA excellent circles over 80% of the time, and we're out in the competent area. We're zero incompetent. We're 20% or less competent, and everything else is excellent or unique. And
Yeah.
we spend a lot of time on that.
Yeah. Well, what would you say, like, characteristics of a great broker versus characteristics of a great leader, or like different things that if I'm a good broker and I'm thinking about this jump, I really need to make sure I'm working on these couple things.
It's just like if you're an athlete, and the difference between a great player and a great coach. I'm not sure there's any great
Overlap.
players, great players that have become great coaches, right? The coaches tend to be people who are mediocre in their craft, and they have to work really, really hard to be good.
Yeah.
And the superstar brokers are probably best served to hire somebody that really manages the team for them. And they continue, again, we get back to this unique ability. Darla Longo, who's at CBRE, I think the number one producer ever, still working in her later years, and she has this massive team. And they just put Darla. She has one job. That's it. She's out there generating business. Jim Trobaugh, who I worked with in Grubb and Ellis, and went to CBRE. He literally had a 35-year career. All he did was cold call for 35 years. That was what he was good at. He liked it. He'd come in and he'd call 8 hours a day, 40 days a week. And that team built it around him. And he had just a fantastic career. So that's what we kind of look at, is what are the skills that you love doing? And we put you in that skill. That's what
Yeah.
a good team does.
Well, it's like, think of Steve Kerr as one that came to mind, who he was a good player. He wasn't Michael Jordan,
No.
and he's become a great coach.
He had a lot of grit, he had a lot of
Yep.
grit, and Jordan respected him enough to, obviously get
Yeah.
him the winning shot at one of the championships. But again, to that point, it is a constant reminder to me that sometimes brokers aren't meant to be team leaders. You
Yeah.
can generate a team, but the purpose of generating a team is to allow you to do what you do really well, more and more. And I think that's one of the learnings that people have as brokers over time, is wherever I'm really good. And
Yeah.
for some brokers, starting a business is the worst thing you could do, because
Yeah.
they have no administrative skills, no accounting skills, no team
Team
leadership
leaders.
skills.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it just, if that's not what you're passionate about, or you're good at, or something you really want to be good at, then all it's doing is taking away from what you are good at, which is going to get business, or whatever it is,
I,
right? So
yeah, I
yeah,
totally
it
think they
becomes a
could
distraction.
start the team, but they need the second member of their team to do it,
Yeah.
because there's going to be a 2-year learning curve of not trying to do things that you're not good at, but the learning curve of building the team. Building a team is no easy. I mean, it is incredibly difficult. And I am shocked at how many brokers get in bed with another broker and form a team without really thinking about it. Hey, I
Yeah.
kind of like this person. I kind of like what they do, and I think we should join up.
Yeah.
And then 2 years later, it doesn't work out, and they wonder why. And it's like, well, you didn't do your homework, right? What
Is
am I
that
looking for?
is that common in the market and of just guys will team up and then kind of break up and like, does that happen kind of all the time?
Yeah, it's really common when the market turns south.
Hmm.
Everybody's everybody's happy while we're making money.
Yeah.
And then as soon as the market takes a
A
dump, it's like you're not doing what you're supposed to do, and I can make more money without you. Yeah.
couple final questions here. What advice would you give to someone specifically on the fence of uh, should I start a team? Should I partner up with someone or should I keep doing what I'm doing? If they're teetering on that fence, what would you say?
Well, I think it's super easy in our business, which is great. One of the reasons I became a broker, one of the reasons I continue to be a broker is it's super easy. As you know, building one source is just it's a mess. I mean, we had to, we now, I don't know, how many people do we have now, right now?
17.
17. So we have 17 people, like, and they're in across the board. We have five computer engineers, we have salespeople, we have onboarding people, we
All
have
different
administration,
personalities. Yep.
operations, all different. It is really hard to build a company. But brokerage, it's really easy to kind of build a half team. Add an assistant. If you want to do that, add an assistant. And that'll be the telling point. Can you keep it? I hear from brokers all the time, I can't keep an assistant. But it's because you treat them like shit
Yep.
and you're not a very good leader. And so you'll understand right there is like, okay, well, this is an indication that you shouldn't continue to build your team if you can't, how are teams built? They're built one person at a time. And even in our team, you and I started this, but I would have never started this. Knowing what I knew with Capola Cheney, I would have never started one source if you hadn't committed, right? And we would have never been successful like we are now if we hadn't gotten Sam Absalon and then Brock Baker. I remember when we recruited Brock, he had been with us a year or two as an intern and he was graduating. We were like, this is a really critical hire for us. And it was really literally, it was Alex. We kept Alex, Sam, and then Brock, and then you. It was like that four core was really important to us. And it's still important today. And all three of you are still with us. And that's all four of you are still with us. And it's incredibly important as you build a team. So a broker can do that, but just start with one and then add another one. Build a team slowly, not ramp it up and
Yep.
hire
Put these pieces together,
Yeah,
blah, blah, blah.
that's
Yeah.
really hard.
Okay, and then last question. We spent some time on the team, but to tie it back to opening your own shop. So I know we have a lot of independent brokerage companies, and then we also have a lot of brokers at the big shops that are customers and that listen to these. What advice would you share to someone who is on the fence of like, and they have an opportunity to go start their own thing or open a new office? What would you tell that person?
Well, I am a big proponent of it. One of the worst things that happens to brokers is we develop over 4 or 5 years, we develop a skill set and we get a niche and then we stop growing. And
Do
and
that for
then
30 years.
you
Yeah.
just do the same thing for 30 years. And first of all, business gets super boring. Yeah, you can make a lot of money, you can have a lifestyle, and you can live in a big home like I do. But you're not fulfilling your destiny. And so the idea of taking some risks, changing it up a little bit, building a team, maybe joining a different shop, those things make you a better broker. And I became a better broker when I left Grubb and Ellis and went to Lee and Associates because I had to become a real hunter. And I remember the first couple of deals where I was going head to head with some from a bigger shop and lost the deals. And I'm like, in my mind, I simply said to myself, I have to get better. And that forced me to become a better broker. And then the other thing that really happens, because we're big proponents of this, is that you start looking at the world from the owner's perspective. Every time I go into a client or, I just invested in another real estate deal. But I invest most of my deals that I'm an LP in are because I'm investing with other brokers that are buying their deals and I trust those guys. So my buddy Paul Braun at JLL in San Diego and Chris Voss, they're buying some medical buildings. I don't know anything about medical, very little about medical office, but those guys do, and I'm happy to get involved with their deals because I really trust and they know the marketplace. So
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of growth that can come from that as you
Yeah.
explore it.
I'll end with like a personal story for myself. We had started CRE OneSource, and I had given notice to my last company, but I was sticking around to help them train the next group, and I was kind of doing both, right? OneSource and working at my last company. And my last company was a small company, and we had grown a lot, and I was part of those decisions in those rooms, in those meetings on the management side. And I thought I knew what it meant to lead a company, or at least be in those rooms. And it was in that period where I was still doing both. And it was like very early days of OneSource. And there was one customer we had, and there was a problem with the software. And I literally, got the email, and I was like, who do I go to? Who can help me with this? And that was the first time where I realized it's me. I
Hard
have to
stuff
figure
here.
this out. Yeah. And that's been, every day since then. But I vividly remember where I was sitting when I read that email, and that feeling I had of like, well, I could call Craig, but he's not going to know better than I am. Like, I got to figure it out.
It's a crazy thing when the buck stops with you, and that's where the growth really occurs. And it's really interesting because that brings up a story. We brought a team over from CBRE, over the 30 years. We brought into Lee and Associates. We would recruit senior brokers, and this team stayed with us for 4 or 5 years and never got this giver versus taker thing. They had been at CBRE so long, they were always fighting the team. We need this, we need this, we need this. And it just wasn't a good fit. And 5 years later, they left and went to another big shop because they were in the taker mindset and never got into the, hey, we're really owners here and this matters. And so there's some people, they're great brokers. They just didn't fit into the organization as an owner. And so you had this experience and you manned up, but you could have easily said, look, I'm going to go be a COO at some other company right now because I don't want this kind of
Yeah,
pressure.
I'm going to sleep better at night or
And,
whatever
and
it is.
your former boss who ran the company just took it. She is a total beast, right? She's like the buck stops with me, always has, always will. And she came up, she didn't go to college not every step of the way. And one of the reasons why we invested with her is because of that. She knew exactly what she was going to do, and she built an incredible company as we're doing here at OneSource.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. This is near and dear to my heart just because I've gotten to live it over the last 5 years, and you've obviously lived it your last 30 years. But really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.